Ah, brilliant. And at 1 minute past 1 o'clock, hello, good afternoon, and welcome to Canny Commuting, the webinar series that makes it easier for people to walk, cycle, and get public transport to work and for work. Canny Commuting is brought to you by My Journey Hampshire in association with Sustrans and is funded by Highways England. My name's Andy and I am your Canny Commuter in Chief. And for the last 15 years, I have worked in Winchester, Portsmouth, Southampton, and Eastleigh, and have spent most of that time getting to work either on foot, on bike, or by public transport. So I know a little bit about getting around the area that we're talking about today. However, today I am joined by two people who are significantly more expert than I, and I'm going to go first to Carolyn. Would you like to introduce yourself to the rest of the group?
Hello, thanks Andy. So I work in the My Journey team as a sustainable transport project lead. So mostly working with schools, but obviously got my own experience commuting by bike as well. So I've been cycling to work for about 8 years, and that's in Southampton and Brighton mainly. Starting off winging my way through it, and the way I've done things has changed quite a lot. So I used to wear lycra and get changed in that and ride on the main roads, and I've completely changed along the way. So it would have been helpful to have some of these when I first started. That's about it. Thanks.
But that's why we're here and that's why we're doing this. Ray, would you like to introduce yourself to those of us who haven't met you already?
Yes, hi everyone. My name is, I get it's Ray, but I do get called Bike It Ray. I work for Sustrans. I also work for My Journey, but I also work with schools, getting everyone out cycling and scooting. I also am a mountain bike coach, and I take people out on rides, and also bikeability coach. So over the years, hopefully I've picked up a few tips I'd like to share with you today, and I look forward to it. Let's do it.
Fabulous. So today is all about making sure that your cycle is comfortable. We have in some of our previous episodes talked about the kind of clothes you can wear to make sure that you arrive without working up a sweat so you don't need a shower. They will be, if you're watching us on YouTube, they will be in the links below and on the playlist. And failing that, they will be at myjourneyhampshire.com/Canny Commuting, where you can see all of our previous episodes. But it's one of my personal bugbears when you see people enduring riding their bike because it's painful and it's uncomfortable. It really doesn't have to be. And what's going to happen now is that Carolyn and Ray are going to tell you about all the brilliant ways they've discovered of making sure that cycling is comfortable so you can get to work feeling happy and not sore. Over to you.
Yes, so I'll kick off if that's right.
Actually, before you start, if you have any questions, we have got about 10 minutes at the end for questions and answers. So if you have anything that you would like to ask Carolyn and Ray, stick it in the comments and we'll come back to it at the end and we'll talk about stuff. So if you have anything you would like to know that they don't cover, just ask. And now I really will be quiet. All right.
And then we have to live up to the expert name that you've given us. So same thing as Andy said, and especially around saddles, I think you hear a lot of people just saying that cycling is uncomfortable, but it definitely doesn't have to be that way. So I think we'll talk through, there are some things that you can do which might mean, if you're at the point of buying a bike, there are things to think about even before you've got one. If you've already got a bike, there's a lot you can do with the setup to adjust it. And then there are other things that you can buy or swap out on your bike as well to help the fit. So there's three main things that you want to think about, or areas, when you're getting set up comfortable, and those are the main contact points on the bike. So that is your hands, your feet, and your bum. The bum being the main one where people seem to raise issues. So I guess we start off there. And I obviously speaking, like women and men have some of the same issues there, but like some will have particular issues as well. So Ray might have some different stuff to add that I don't. But so saddle, in terms of an actual saddle, they come in 1,000,001 different shapes and sizes. For women, to start off with, generally they are a bit wider because your pelvis is a bit wider, and most women will find that a pressure relief channel, so like this hole down the middle, if you like, which again can be tiny, or they can be just a cutout which isn't a hole, or they can be really wide, can be helpful. But you, like a saddle, they come in different lengths, different widths, different taper. So this one's the best one. So they are normally quite wide at the top and narrow at the bottom. That can prevent thigh rub. And everyone is individual really. So what you want to do is try out different saddles. Some shops will can measure you up. If you've got friends with different shaped saddles, you can try their bike or swap out their saddles. So some are completely flat. If it's flat, that's quite good if you move around a lot on the bike and you do that. Some have got a dip in the middle, and that's better if you've got a more forward leaning position. So that can take some pressure off of your soft tissues. And then, yeah, some are very cushioned and some are quite hard, but don't automatically think that because it's got loads of cushioning, then it's going to be really comfy. Like that can also get in the way, if you like, if it's a huge saddle. So some people find like smaller, harder saddles more comfortable. So it's just about trying different ones. I tend to have quite like small, hard ones, but that's just what suits me. So again, just trying out what you can. When you've got your saddle, or you've already got one, there's a lot of adjustment you can do within there. So you can tilt it on your bike forward and backwards. So it's almost got like a, well, not 360 degrees, but like it's got a huge plane of movement that you can adjust on the saddle. So you can adjust it forwards and backwards. You can adjust it up and down. You can have a bit of tilt all the way around. If you have it too far forwards, then you might have a tendency to slide off, and that's obviously uncomfortable because you're going to be pushing yourself back again. But equally, if you have it pointing up too much, well, it's kind of obvious that might be uncomfortable, but that's going to put a lot of pressure on your soft tissue again, and likewise you're kind of going to be slipping backwards. But just a little bit of adjustment at a time can help you out. So if you are feeling a lot of pressure, say just tilt it down a slight bit. You'll need an Allen key. It's an easy job to do. Go for a ride. If that hasn't helped, maybe try it a little bit more. Same thing. The other thing that's a big one is obviously a saddle height. So that's not specific to the saddle itself, but that's adjusting the kind of distance, the pedal distance to the ground. So if your saddle is too high and you're stretching to pedal to reach your pedals, you're going to be moving around quite a lot in the saddle, moving side to side as you put the pressure down. So that could cause you some discomfort because of the movement on the saddle. You might get some rub. As equally though, if you've got your saddle too low, you're going to have a lot of pressure on your bum because the pressure's not going through your feet. You're struggling to put the power through your legs as you want to, and that pressure is all going to be in your bum. So again, like small adjustments, go for a little ride, see if that has helped up and down. But the position on the saddle, you should, when you've got your leg fully extended, so the bottom of the rotation, if you like, you should have a bit of a bend in your leg, not completely straight, but just a little bit of a bend. So that height is really important, and obviously the whole fit of your bike comes into that as well. The other thing, if you got your saddle too high, is you might have too much pressure on another of the contact points, which is your hands, because you might be kind of leaning forward and putting a lot of pressure through your hands. So they all play into each other. And the only, aside from the saddle, kind of things that might affect your bum, that's a strange sentence, and I thought I'd say on a webinar. It's obviously clothing, and we've got a separate Canny Commuting session which you can go back to and have a look. But yeah, just to consider that some clothes might, like different materials, might rub obviously when you're riding. Hopefully if you're doing a commute, it might just be a fairly short ride and that won't be a problem. But if you've got a longer one, just think about, yeah, like what materials we're wearing. Some might rub in the same way if you went for a run in them or you went for a walk in them. You probably don't want to wear them on a bike. If you're doing a particularly long commute or ride and you choose to get changed, you can get cycling shorts which have the chamois in them, so they can be really helpful in combination with a good saddle. So don't know if you want to add anything on the bum, Ray, on the saddle. You're muted.
Ray, you're on mute.
Hey guys, so thanks. Sorry, I've just had a bit of cat trouble whizzing through here, and the wind, they've gone a bit wild. Hi, Sophie. Thanks, Carolyn. Yeah, crikey, yeah, it's a big subject, isn't it? So we're all different shapes and sizes. I think it's great that you can, you get the chance to try out some different saddles. I know there's some companies that'll actually let you borrow them. I know Specialized are quite good at things like that. As you mentioned, Carolyn, about yeah, the seat rails, you know, getting that right, and sometimes they have little measurements on there on the actual rail, so you can kind of make sure you put it in the middle, or like on my bike, as I'll jump on it in a minute and just show you setting up the saddle height. I've got mine a little bit backwards, a little bit further back, because it suits me a little bit better. But it is about trying it out, definitely. I'll jump on my bike. Actually, Karen, you talked about, you know, measuring your saddle height, and sometimes there's a bit of confusion about that. Maybe it'd be helpful. Let me just show you. If you can all see me, jump on my work bike. So Carolyn mentioned that yeah, you can have your front foot there and have a slight bend in your leg there, but a really good way of measuring it, make sure it's roughly right. It does depend on different bikes and different types of riding you do, and also different types of sports riding. But if you put your heel and place it on your pedal, you should have pretty much a straight leg from the pedal to your hip, just on your pelvis here. And that makes sure that you're getting all the strength out of your legs, getting the power out of your legs, and you're not rocking your hips backwards and forwards. So that's kind of your saddle side of things. Just something to throw in there on my bike that I've set up to consider is that brake levers as well, really important to make sure they're comfortable. They have a little adjustment in here with a Allen key. And what you can do is you can move your brake lever in a bit so your fingers line up better. So I like to ride with just one finger on my brake lever, so I've got more control on my grips. Those of you sort of maybe two fingers, sometimes what happens is when you buy a bike is the brake lever is right across to the far end, so you end up sort of having to put all your fingers on there, which doesn't give you as much control or confidence. So that's something to think about, moving them across. And also, if I can just show you on here, when you are sat on your bike, that what you're looking for is pretty much a nice kind of straight line up to your elbow and up to your shoulder. So make sure your brake levers aren't up like that and putting extra, you know, stress on your wrist here, which is really bad. So got a nice line down there, really comfortable. And I don't know about you, Carolyn, do you have some of these ergo grips? I'm quite a fan of those.
Yes, yeah. So like it does spreads out the pressure on your palm, so it's a bit wider than normal when you have some different positions. I've also got on my work bike, as you called it, some they're a bit out of fashion in some ways, I think now, but they've got bar ends on them, which means that you can have a different hand position as well. But that's something that you can add on, and I mean they came on my bike, but you can add them on, especially if you're doing a longer ride, you want to move your hands around if they get a bit numb if you've been in the same position. Yes, yeah, they're good for that.
We've also got yeah, I would say also, guys, that you know, we're giving sort of general advice, aren't we, Andy, today on, but if you want to, it is worth getting a real professional bike fit. You know, they put you on a special machine, a special bike, and measure your own, you know, individual leg length and so on. And of course we were talking about pedals and all the contact points. So yeah, hands, feet and bum, definitely. Just make sure, we mentioned this in another Canny, didn't we, Andy, about, you know, make sure you've got some really nice grippy pedals that are really comfortable and quite a wide platform if you're doing a lot of miles. And of course, when the weather turns and it gets a bit wet, it's definitely worth having those to give you that extra grip, especially if you're standing up on the pedals and you're out of the saddle and you want to make sure your feet don't slip off. Just a little tip in there, a very good investment to make.
Yeah, I've had some rubbish flat pedals before, which are completely metal, so fine in good weather, but as soon as it was rainy, your feet just slip off of them. I mean, and then that is shoes as well to think about. You don't need any special shoes or something, but you don't necessarily want like, you probably want something with a decent sole. I mean, I don't like some people are okay riding in whatever shoes, but I don't like being able to feel the pedal too much, if you like. And it's so if you've got a nice solid sole, just a normal pair of trainers like will do it, or proper shoes. But yeah, maybe not some flip-flops or something where they you're feeling the grip through the shoes. I mean, you were talking about adjustments, and we're probably all a bit guilty of it, as you just, not just for bikes but anything, but you get it and it's set up and you use it as it is. But there's so many adjustments you can make on the bike, and you don't need any special gear. You just need a multi-tool, and like they're all generally like a standard Allen key. And yeah, like again, a bike fit is great, especially if you've got a particular issue. But again, if you just make small adjustments at a time, so whether that is to your saddle, to height, tilt, whatever, and again to your brake levers, etc., just do a little bit at a time. And see if you have a particular issue, and then see if that helps it at all, because just a small adjustment makes a big difference. And like you say, the brake levers as well, that's one that maybe people don't necessarily know about, and quite a lot of women I've found, because they tend to have smaller hands, like are stretching for the brakes, and that just makes the whole experience of riding the bike less enjoyable, because you can't brake so easily, because you want ideally to be able to use them with a single finger, so you need them in easy reach. I guess the other thing for feet and shoes and that contact point is, well, with hands and feet as well, you might be okay kind of year round with the temperature, because you can ride a bit faster if you want to keep warm the bike, but your hands and your feet in winter, not moving so much, if you like, and not putting so much effort in. So at least for me as well, you tend to feel the temperature and feel the cold in those. So it's hard to even imagine it at the moment when it's nice outside, but in winter, like just a decent pair of gloves. It doesn't have to be cycling specific ones, but that said, waterproof ones are great, because as soon as your hands get wet with a normal pair of gloves, if you like, they're still going to feel the cold, because you've got the wind added to that as well. So waterproof gloves are great. Like normal ski gloves can do that as well. And you can also get like shoe covers, which are waterproof as well, if you don't like waterproof and or warm, to keep your feet warm. As I say, I get really cold toes, so they can really help. You don't need to have cycling shoes, but you can use them with that. So you've got like you've got some which just cover your toes, toe covers, as it says on the tin, and you've got other ones which you can cover up your whole shoes, and that can also keep your shoes dry if you're going to work as well. You just whip them off at the other side, and you don't need to get changed or have a second set of shoes with you.
I think that's great advice, Karen. I was just saying, you just reminded me also about I like to wear, especially when it's wet and you might get mud in your face or flies in your eyes, I like to wear clear glasses quite often. Talking about comfort, you don't want to be going along and sort of something goes in your eye and you've got to pull over and sort that out. So yeah, certain riding definitely worth just putting a little pair of clear glasses on.
The other thing that's going to say about hands is, you mentioned the ergonomic grips. You can change out grips if you haven't got comfortable ones, or if they're really old, sometimes they start to molt, for want of a better word. They lose their rubber and you get hands covered in black stuff, and they're not very comfortable. They get a bit sticky in summer. If you've got a road bike or a bike with drop handlebars with bar tape on it, again, it's really easy to change that out. Some people find it a bit daunting, but I as a rubbish mechanic or an inexperienced mechanic myself, I really like doing it. It's a bit of a mindfulness activity that will show you how to do it. But you can, like, obviously the tape on those grips will wear out eventually, so you can replace it. You can get really spongy ones, you can get thin ones, a bit like a saddle. So you can, that's just up to personal choice really. But you can change this out. Good fun. And it makes the bike look nice and fresh as well. So
a canny episode coming on, Andy, maybe bike taping.
We are not doing that, right?
These grips I just mentioned, grip. Yeah, it's worth definitely investing in some good grips. These are lock-on grips, so they've got a little grub screw at the end, and they just stay on better really. They last a bit longer, so definitely worth looking at that.
Another, well, I would say quick consideration, but it's a big consideration. But if you are at the point of choosing a bike, obviously not looking specifically at contact points, like bike choice, bike position, if you're thinking specifically about commuting, it's again up to personal preference, but I really like to have an upright position and straight handlebars for commuting, because you can see, you get your head up in traffic, you can see cars, you can see what's going on. Everything's in easy reach, your brake, your bell, whatever you need. Some people like the step through bike, easier to get on and off, especially for women, or you can have one with a crossbar if you're comfortable getting over in it. The other thing is electric assist. That might make your ride more comfortable if you've got lots of hills, if you've got heavy stuff to carry, if you just don't want to arrive in a sweat. That's definitely going to be a more comfortable ride. And then thinking about routing as well. Again, like you might want to do an off-road ride, so that might dictate your bike choice, but you can consider, like, are you going to have, is there an option of a rubbish road surface, if you like? Is there a potholed road or a lovely smooth road? You can add that, you can plan that into your route, and that will give you a more comfortable ride to work as well.
Fabulous. We've got some questions coming in. Before we do that, I'm going to talk more about grips as well. These are two from my shed at the moment. These are ones that have come off my. When Carolyn was talking about grips wearing out, I don't know if you can see just how flat that's got in places. That's about 2 years worth of use. I bought these because they were really highly rated in a magazine, and they're just too small for my hands. So grips come in different sizes and different thicknesses, and it's almost as much like a saddle that go. They're really easy because all you do is it's like one Allen bolt just there, or potentially one at both ends. Go and give them a try in the shop once we're allowed to touch things in the shop again. So that's quite a big deal. And different, it's just like saddles, different sorts will fit different hands. We've had a question from Jenny about the difference between flat bars and drop bars. Now, this is my work bike, which you can see has drop bars on it. I really like them. I mean, I ride mountain bikes with flat bars for fun when I'm not at work, but I find this position is really comfortable and it's quite a commanding position. But then I'm 6'2", so whatever position I'm in, I'm quite a long way up off the ground. But as Carolyn said, it means I can move around and change my hand grip at different times. We've had some comments from Joe, who's been asking about padding on gloves. Do you have any feelings about those?
Don't have any big comments, but I mean, I've talked a bit more about winter, but you can obviously get summer gloves, like these kind of sporty looking things, but they're not to keep your hands warm. They do have kind of a limited bit of padding on there. You want to look at your grips first, because ideally that will be the comfy bit. It's a bit like the saddle again. You want a decent saddle, and then if you choose to as well, you could wear some padded shorts. The other thing is like yeah, just the material of some grips, as I said, especially in hot weather, even if it's a great grip, they can get a bit sticky. So that takes away that issue if you're wearing those.
Yeah, much like Carolyn, I really suffer from cold hands. I suffer from the Raynaud's phenomenon, which cuts the blood supply off to my fingers when it gets cold, which is brilliant. So I have about 8 different pairs of gloves depending on what the temperature is. I really don't like padding on my gloves because I find that it often gets in the way of the grips that I've got. And what is like loads of nice covering on the back, but something nice and thin on the palm makes me feel connected and comfortable on the bike. But again, it's kind of a personal preference thing. Some people like loads of padding there. I'm not so keen. Windproof gloves make a massive difference to how comfortable you are. Even if they're not waterproof, you've at least got protection from the wind, because that's what makes you really cold. We've also had a question in on noseless saddles. Has anyone got any experience of noseless saddles?
I don't have any experience, but I just know that you can get any kind of saddle that you like now in crazy, yeah, any kind of shape that you ever like. I think they're, I think they're aimed more towards men in general, because it relieves pressure, like especially in sporty rides, where you don't actually need a saddle there, if you like. The same with if you're racing, some of the saddles tend to be shorter because you're down in that position, so you don't need any support to move around on the bike. But it's kind of the same answer in any saddle question, in that it's personal preference. So try it where you can. As I say, some shops will let you try, and some shops will also are able to kind of measure how you do sit on a bike. So like Ray mentioned, Specialized. I think if you go into one of their specific stores, you can sit on a bike, and they'll basically have they have a pressure sensor, so they'll have an image of how you sit, and they'll be able to recommend a saddle for you. Otherwise, yeah, if you've got friends with different types of saddles, then you can try out a few and get a better idea of what's for you. Brilliant.
Now, before this next question, none of us are medical professionals, but we will give some advice on this. We've had a question from Anna about relieving pressure on knees. Do you have any tips on that? I can dive in while you're thinking if you want.
I think that's probably, go on, Andy.
There's usually two causes of knee pain, which are entirely unrelated to each other. One of them is if you've got really tight quads, which is this muscle down here. Basically, the muscle joins up over the top of your knee, and if that's tight, then that can cause knee pain, because every time you pedal, it pulls across the top of the kneecap, and I've been to a physio with that in the past. The other reason for knee pain is that your saddle isn't quite lined up in some way, that it's either too far forward or too far back, and you're placing too much load on that knee rather than a kind of a neutral thing. One tip I heard for making sure you get that fore and aft adjustment right is if you sit on the saddle with your pedals level and put a plumb bob against your knee, it should line up roughly with the axle on the pedal, which is, you're going to need someone else to help you with that. That's one to get a helping hand with. But if you are suffering from knee pain, the problem is often to do with where your saddle is, or that you need to do more quad stretches. Ray?
Yoga's the way to go. Yeah, no, definitely that plumb line one. Yeah, your knee, in a straight line down to there, that's going to help. I think it does depend again on type of pedals. We touched on, these shoes here, whether you've got clipless pedals and things like that, making sure that your cleats are all lined up properly. If you want to try those, these are SPD ones. They can make a big difference. But cycling is great for the knees. It strengthens them. It's but I think it is a bit of seeking some medical. But just try and slight little tweaks, like Carolyn said, a few millimeters on the seat post up and down. Try it out, do a few miles, see how you feel. I don't know if we mentioned about measuring saddle, your sit bones. I think we alluded on another show actually, Andy, about.
Yeah, I mean, we brushed on it earlier today, but crack on.
Yeah, just very easy. Just get yourself sit on a hard surface with a piece of cardboard on it, and just sit there for a couple of minutes until your sit bones make a couple of indentations, and then you can measure the width, and then you've got an idea. If you go on some of the manufacturers' websites, they'll actually say 8 centimeters, 10 centimeters sit bones, and you can narrow down a few saddles for yourself that way. You can do some chalk on it just to show your indentations if you want to.
Yeah. And another tip I heard for that was silver foil on the stairs, so where you've got the carpet and it does an indentation. That can be quite helpful. But don't go into the bike shop with a piece of silver foil with divots in it and ask them to fit you for a saddle. Do take a measurement off that. And kind of going back to that pain thing, right back at the beginning, we talked about how this should not hurt. If you are currently hurting on your bike, something is amiss, and check in on that and either adjust things or do some more stretching before you start. There is no such thing as toughen up and it will go away. Seriously.
And pop into a bike shop or something, just let get a second opinion, really. Sometimes you think you might be riding for years actually in the same position and wondering why you're in pain. So second opinion's a really good way to go.
In lieu of other questions, I was going to come back to shoes again. These are two pairs of shoes that I ride in a lot for work. One is a kind of pair of skate shoes, and the joy of these is they've got a really big flat bottom on them with a nice surface area on, so there's a big contact with the pedals, and it's just about friction, and I just find myself more comfortable. These are great. My riding shoes that I use when I'm doing it socially have a much more stiff sole. So like Carolyn said, for like 10-15 minutes, it doesn't make much of a difference. But if you're riding for kind of half an hour or more, a stiff sole can be really helpful. But I also ride in these, which are my kind of normal work shoes, and they're not very exciting, but again, it's that big flat sole. So there's a nice big flat contact area so that I feel confident that I'm going to stay put when I'm on the bike. I had a terrifying experience recently where I tried to ride my bike wearing a pair of walking boots, and it was like wearing football studs on a tile floor. It was absolutely horrific.
And Andy, just I teach the children this a lot. Make sure your shoelaces are tucked in, because there's nothing worse than those winding around your pedal axle while you're going along. Very dangerous. Tuck them in, tuck them down the front of the webbing, and they should stay in there.
Absolutely. Okay, it is past. We are just about out of time. I would briefly like to say thank you very much for Carolyn for joining us and sharing your experience and wisdom. It's been really, really helpful. And thank you again very much to Ray. We've just had a quick one come in on laces. Jenny loves her elastic laces, so you don't even have to tie them up. They just stay done up forever. They are great for those of us who are a bit forgetful. We are, as ever, back here next week when we are going to be talking about trains and catching the train either on foot or on bike to get to work. This video will go up on YouTube. If you're watching us on YouTube, please like and subscribe to the video. It really helps, and all your views are really greatly appreciated. I can be reached on social media at Sustrans Andy. Carolyn can be reached at...
In 2 wheels, 2 with the number 2.
And Ray can be reached at
Bike It Ray on Twitter.
And we, as I say again, we can be found at myjourneyhampshire.com/Canny Commuting. Please go there. All of the previous episodes are up there. Thank you very much. We will see you all next week. Goodbye.
You.
Bye, everyone. Happy rolling.